Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to T- the podcast presented by 321. I am the temporary host of today, Nico.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Jeff.
I'm Clayton.
So I read an article just a few days ago, and it had a survey statistic in it. So apparently 1 in 5 marketing leaders believe that it is too risky for a brand to get political or to make a political statement. And the other are the remaining 20%. So the 1 in 5 that agree that you could make a political statement say that the benefits outweigh the risks. And I thought this would be like a good spiritual successor to our Nike conversation. And I'm pretty sure in that podcast, the question did come up. We just didn't spend too long on it, whether brands should get political.
I tried.
And the safe answer, the quick answer is no. I think we all just said no. But if we dive into it a bit more, I think there's a lot more nuance to that answer. It depends on what the brand is, what their identity they're trying to build is. And I wanted to get your opinions on that. So just generally across the spectrum, do you think it's safe for a brand to get political or to make a political statement or to take a stance? What do you think?
I think it's important to be just to get your message out there and like make it like a really memorable one. So I would say that it's not always important just to be political, but to be like polarizing. So instead of not every stance you take as a brand should be political, or you shouldn't make a political stance if it has nothing to do with your brand in general. I mean, it could work in some circumstances, but most people would advise against it. So I think it's more important to compete or to have a message that is more purposeful and more purpose-driven rather than politically driven. They can both coincide. There can be a purpose and political-driven statement or stance. But I think it's more important to be polarizing and compete not just on a product level, but compete on a purpose level, no matter what size business you are. Whether if you're in a pizza business, it's really important to not just focus on what your product is, but to like what your product or brand means to your consumers, right? How can you get them to identify with your brand? Because pizza across the board is very similar, right? It's a very similar product. So the economy right now is in a state where we have to compete on purpose to really niche each company versus worrying about creating the next product, because most of the stuff we use today has been around, right? Aside from maybe like smartphones, even smartphones in a sense are pretty normal, or like they've been the same for the past 10 years.
Yeah, I think that gets into a good point that I'm pretty sure every marketing leader would agree that brand identity that stands out from the pack is really important to have.
Yeah.
If you just say, if you're selling pizza and you just say, oh, we got the best ingredients, we got the best quality, it's like everyone says that.
Yeah, you really have to like figure out how to pick something that aligns with pizza or aligns with your fan base or whatever it may be, and really create like cheerleaders for it. And it doesn't really have to be about your actual product. It just needs to have some sort of just like a believable purpose,
Yeah, something authentic.
Right.
I guess a good example of that would be Chick-fil-A. Maybe not for all the best reasons, but
right.
It's not. They care a lot about their ministry and their charities and charitable work, or I guess what they consider charity, and that doesn't really rub everyone the right way. So I mean, you have one company that's kind of taking a stance, has nothing to do with chicken sandwiches, but it is definitely in line with their corporate values, right?
Yeah. How much damage do you think that does to Chick-fil-A?
Well, I think within a week or two, they had already reversed their statement and stopped publicly funding, conversion therapy camps and stuff.
Oh, so they actually took a step back from it.
Mm-hmm.
It was doing more harm than good, I guess.
Right.
Sometimes, though, I think too, that there doesn't need to necessarily be a strong political statement. Like, I don't think they necessarily need to speak on an issue or take a side on an issue, but I think that a lot of companies have made it, at least now in the Trump era of politics, have really at least made statements on inclusivity and like being open to everyone, and like however they want to write those statements or push those statements out there. I've seen a lot of companies do that. So even if you're not speaking on gun laws or you're not speaking on gay rights, I think there are a lot of companies out there that are making it their mission to at least appear as inclusive as possible in a political climate that can seem very exclusive and very hateful and very dividing. So I think that that's another way companies can kind of skirt around the making political stances type of situation. Obviously, if a company wants to take a strong position, you want them to have a strong message behind it. You want it to match their identity. But a lot of businesses are in the business of people. And I think even businesses that sell products could easily be in the business of just people. And when you break it down to that most basic level, it opens up a lot of opportunity to make statements that I guess you could call them politically nodding statements.
It's something that makes them stand out from what everyone else is doing.
Right.
Like, you're not just saying better ingredients, you're saying a wholesome community and pushing values like that.
Yeah.
But it's non-offensive statement still. It's safe enough that any brand could make it
Right.
without rubbing some people the wrong way. And
We
if somebody
serve
is
everyone.
if somebody is like annoyed at that, then like screw them anyways, right? Like, they're probably loyal to a very specific set of brands that support the NRA. I'll stop myself there. Somebody save me.
Or like the people who, want to only make wedding cakes for certain people or products for certain people. It's like those are the people that don't necessarily make a statement, but they're like willing to bar people from utilizing their products or services and then want protections under the law to do so.
Right. I think like a good the next stopping point is or next brand is think about Tom's, because Tom's, the whole idea of them making shoes, you buy a pair of shoes and they send a pair of shoes overseas to children in need or whoever it may be. I think that is an example of both a company delivering a product that's, I guess most people like Tom's, and my experience with Tom's is they're not comfortable at all, but I do appreciate the fact that that they do something that's a socially, it is a social stance, right? They're saying, hey, there are other people who don't have the opportunity to get, just have shoes, something that's so basic, right? So I think that's like a polarizing thing. It's a little bit, I guess it can be considered political, but they're putting a stance on something that's purposeful, and it's like easy to align with that because there's not I don't think there's groups of people who don't want children to have shoes, right? So.
But I think it's also that like companies like Tom's have a nuanced understanding of what they're pushing. They are shoe manufacturers, so they know very much the cost of doing business and the means of distribution, and they see a need and they contribute to that need. Using their network, using their corporate power, and using that messaging as essentially, it's no secret that Tom's, donates shoes. I mean, that's pretty much the only thing anybody knows about them as a brand.
Right.
That's
a good thing to identify your brand with, though.
Yeah.
It's very positive and nobody can really argue.
It's definitely a good identity.
But also it's like, I don't know, I have a problem with doing something just to make people feel comfortable. Like, I think it's a really awesome thing they do. And yes, you are right. Who out there doesn't want to buy a pair of shoes and have a pair of shoes go to someone in need? We'll just say in need. We don't actually know where everything goes. I don't personally.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
But I think if it's within reason and if it's something that your company can speak on and it does feel like it warrants a response politically, I think it's up to the company to make statements that are not going to make everyone feel comfortable. There is nothing comfortable to say about people getting gunned down in schools. There is just nothing to make people feel comfortable about that, and nobody should feel comfortable about that. So then I think if a company wants to take a very specific stance like that is extremely weighted in this country, and you're going to lose business, you're making statements that go against the NRA, things of that nature. That's one specific example. There's many you could take down different avenues, but I think it's good to have a strong brand message and you want to include as many people as possible, but you also, if you're willing to make a large political statement and you're willing to tackle a controversial issue, you cannot make everyone feel comfortable.
I agree to your point. I'm of the opinion that like with higher risk comes higher reward. And I feel like with Tom's and with you'll see these like local pizza shops that give like free coffee to first responders, and it's just, that's cool, and that's like, that is taking a step to make your brand stand out from the sea of other brands that aren't doing those things. But it's just so safe still that I feel like taking it a step further would get a lot more recognition, maybe even national level recognition. A lot more people would be talking about it. Like Nike could take a hit and they can take a risk, but with supporting Colin Kaepernick's Black Lives Matter movement and his protest, that's a pretty controversial subject right now, and to plant their flag on one side of that, I think got them a lot more engagement than they would have seen just supporting police or something. It's something like soft instead.
It's engagement, whether good or bad. They got engagement, which I guess is, that's the goal of like a lot of bigger brands, like who can, like you said, who can afford to take a stance.
Yeah.
I think across the board, I think it's a good entry point for smaller pizza shops to do that, to make, and it is very small, like you said, there is no really risk in that. But I think that's how smaller business makes the right steps to becoming more like how other people speak about that pizza shop, right? That's really what the brand is.
Yeah.
So I think that's important for smaller businesses to do, really to hone in on stuff like that, even if there are small things, and they don't have to be necessarily politically charged or anything like that. They just need to be polarizing. They need to be meaningful, purposeful decisions that really helps grow your business on a really small level.
Yeah, I guess I should clarify, like, I don't take issue with brands that support like first responders or military. Like, I think that's something every brand should be doing,
right? But
it should just be taken a step further to remove yourself from the pack and actually stand out.
It's a bare minimum thing. Like, we should be doing this as businesses. We should be helping out our communities.
It's almost expected.
The bare minimum, right?
Yeah.
Well, even just like take a really localized level, there's so many things going on in local politics, and there's so many businesses, and I just think there's things that affect your customers and they affect people, and even on a more local level, you could take like a position on a certain initiative that you know is going to be voted on, or a candidate that you support, and obviously you don't want people to not come to your shop. There's more risk, which we talked about in our the Nike podcast one. We talked about how, like you said about Nike, they're kind of indestructible, so they can make more weighted statements, but I do think there's a lot to be done on a local level, taking away really serious controversial issues. You don't have to like talk about something that's going to rile people up, but you could be involved in a local way politically if you want. I mean, look at what's going on now in Florida. I feel like we are always pushing to get people involved on a localized level constantly, everywhere around the country, but definitely here in Florida. So I think, there's a lot to be done and a lot of really unique ways to approach that and to make a difference to your exact community, and not just be like, okay guys, let's go to the drawing board and find a way to really stir up drama in the community. Let's be controversial. It's like, no, you could just not be controversial at all and just like support a local initiative that's maybe putting like more tax dollars here or helping a business here, something like that.
Yeah, I think like a bike shop, supporting safer road conditions here in Orlando is a really big thing, right? Like, I don't think it's no secret that riding your bike in Orlando is absolutely dangerous.
Yeah.
And there's not proper bike lanes here. And these are small things. I know that local governments, they're trying to get just, more, safe conditions, more bike lanes that come through Orlando that, allow people in the metro area to not be driving in this mess at 5 o'clock. But, maybe...
Surprisingly, bike lanes is actually a controversial issue here.
Yeah.
Based on like the community meetings that happen. They did a road diet test right in the neighborhood I live on, and on Curry Ford, and everybody was so pissed off about it just because they closed 2 lanes of traffic to make them bike lanes. So instead of 4 driving lanes, it was just 2 driving lanes. And and they only did it for a month, and everybody was losing their minds. So I'd love to see a brand like support something like that, because the statistics show that the test went really well and that the road became a lot safer. So I hope they do it again. But it's these local things are easy to do. You're not rubbing people the wrong way too hard, where they're gonna abandon your brand just because you support safe bike lanes.
Most people don't even know what the initiatives are in their local community, so I would dare the majority of the population to find something to be irritated about. They would have to then be engaged in their local community. So if anything, it would probably help people become more engaged and be like, well, what is that I keep seeing? Like, who is that person, or what is that initiative I keep seeing the number for? Like, I don't understand. So I think too that you put a lot of faith in people, like on a local level, to understand what's going on locally when most people don't. So that's another thing that's on your advantage. If you're pushing out an initiative, you're almost more at the forefront of it than you are like in the thick of something controversial.
Mm-hmm. So how does Wendy's Twitter fit in here? Because I feel like we have to fit that in the discussion before we end. Because they're not really political, but it's such a strong brand identity that we see so many brands trying to copy them now. Like seems the way to go on social. But so you can't copy them, but if you tear down what they're doing, they're creating a strong brand identity. They are rubbing people the wrong way, not politically, but just by behaving not like we expect brands to behave. What do you guys think?
I think a lot of it has to do with not necessarily Wendy's being the first sassy social media profile, but certainly they cornered that market and they kind of defined what that meant. And so even today, people will still compare those accounts to Wendy's just simply off of that fact.
Well, they weren't the first one, but they were like the one that was like most recognized now, because they just put so much effort into it.
They owned it.
Yeah, they really just to do that kind of thing for a large brand probably takes a whole team. I'm sure more than 5 people constantly replying to people's messages, making really funny. I mean, it's almost like it's comedy. It's really not even like.
Well, that's what they did. Is they hired a bunch of comedians and comedy writers and people who they found via social media and BuzzFeed and stuff like that to work for them.
Social media citizens that were already in the community and knew how to fit right in. I think they say a few writers, and then they have an entire social media strategy team surrounding those few writers, and then they have a larger marketing department that they have to run a lot of things by. Like on their Reddit AMA, they mentioned that anytime they roast McDonald's, they need to get approval for it.
Oh, right.
So they'll draft up the tweet, they'll do a mock-up, they'll send it to management, and they have to explicitly approve the language they're using just to avoid legal issues. It's interesting when you pull the curtain back.
It's not political, but it's really polarizing, right? We absolutely identify, we have that person in mind when Wendy's tweets something kind of snarky or
they threw shade at a whole state.
Yeah. It's just
But at the end of the day, it's just a fast food company. I know that people do get really invested in their brands, for a lot of things, food in particular. But I think that's more maximized on a local, smaller market. I mean, no one's going to sit there and go out of their way to defend Wendy's or McDonald's. So it's just kind of funny to see them fight in the background.
Right. Well, the local bars down here kind of do that, which I think it's Basement has really. Oh yeah. They always make fun of the other bar for their deal, right? In Orlando, that's kind of their thing. So if one person kind of copies or another bar copies what the Basement's doing, they're very open about it on social media and use it to their advantage. Yeah. To get more engagement, because it's, first of all, it's funny, a really small scale, and I think it's in the vein of what Wendy's does on Twitter, right? So it's an example of a small business utilizing that same thing.
I think it's just being consistent too. It's choose your voice and really own it. I mean, I think people are like that, and that's why we appreciate those type of things. If you had a friend who acted one way, and then all of a sudden they said something sassy, and it like they never followed up on it, and they weren't even funny usually, and they weren't even sassy usually, you would be offended. But we all have friends who are like loud and boisterous and funny all the time and make quips and are witty, and we love it and accept them, even if sometimes it's sassy or rude or could potentially hurt your feelings. You know that this is almost sometimes a character this person is playing, or this is just the way they are. So I think for a brand, if you're going to go in that direction, to just own it, like to just continue on with it and be consistent with that language, because then you just look like you were trying to do something as opposed to just that's how you are.
One last thing is that, like, is there opportunity for brands to be political but not necessarily make a statement about it, like not necessarily going all the way all in like Nike did, but something like maybe like Yingling came out in the 2016 election supporting Trump, and that's really the last you heard of it. You know, he had a couple people initial reactions going, "Oh, I'm boycotting Yingling," but you know, they're still pumping him out. They don't, you know, they don't have a Twitter handle that's, you know, constantly reaffirming their support of Trump. It's just something that they said once, and that was it. So is there any other examples like that where, you know, you're taking a polarizing stance, but it's not necessarily investing all the way in?
I mean, yeah, like New Balance does that. I don't think they invest all the way in, but they definitely have come out and supported Trump, or at least supported his policies and initiatives, which is kind of from a business standpoint, like that's their angle that they work. You know, we support this initiative that he wants to support because it's going to better our business and better American businesses, and we're a New Balance and we make everything in America and blah blah blah. It's not really controversial in a way. Nobody's going to stop buying New Balances. I haven't seen anyone stop buying New Balances. It may spike controversy, and then it dies out because they don't have someone constantly spewing out, you know, rhetoric in one direction. I also think it matters the type of controversial thing you support. Like, if you support the hateful statements someone makes, yeah, I don't think people are ever going to let that die. But if you support like a policy behind a president, maybe, I think people just move on to what's the most dramatic thing. I think they might be angry with you, but then they'll literally move on as soon as like the next news headline comes out.
Exactly. It's not interesting enough for some people. Like,
yes.
They really want that's to take the stance on something that's really I don't know, it gets the most attention, that gets the most engagement.
They want drama.
Yeah, exactly. They want you know, whether good or bad, right? You want your name to, some people run their businesses, right? It's like, I just want them talking about me. Doesn't matter if it's good or it's bad. They're still talking about me. My names are still in headlines. And I think we see that in both the political platform and see it on a brand platform too.
Yeah, and supporting like legitimate politics is on the safer side. I feel like a lot of people now are really forgiving to brands for having those opinions, because they'll just say like, oh, they're entitled to those opinions, or it's their money, they can support any nonprofit organizations they want to support. And it's like we're all willing to accept that corporate identities have free speech as well, and I feel like that makes it safe to make a lot of different political statements like Jeff was saying. I mean, as long as you're not saying the N-word on a phone call and having that leaked, like, I think you're golden if you're supporting mainstream politics.
Would you say that you value knowing a brand or company's position politically, whether or not it conflicts with your own position?
Yeah, like not having a stance is a stance in itself. It's like there's no respect to, or for me at least, I'd hold little respect to an identity that's not willing to stand up for anything. You know, it's just like, I don't know if I should trust them or not trust them. It's so just having an opinion one way or another makes it more human, makes it more authentic to me, and I'm able to interact with them now instead of just regurgitating better ingredients at them or regurgitating any other safe branding identities.
I agree, but I also am weary and maybe more cynical because I think in the age of hyper-capitalism, I don't actually believe or trust any brand to care about me. I think some do who have been having political stances for a long time, but then I think that it's also so popular for a company to take a stance or to believe in something or whatever. Do I think Amazon or Jeff Bezos cares about me or the people that I care about? No, absolutely not. I don't care what small, measly, pathetic fraction of his income he gives to DACA or anything. I don't care. Like, I don't believe him, because at the end of the day, some of these mega corporations, they make so much money that the money that they actually give is so insignificant to me. And if you compare it to what they actually make is also so insignificant that it's almost more insulting. It's like you are just hoarding wealth and then want to look like a good person. And I'm not talking about every company. Like, I think Patagonia is a great one. Like, I believe Patagonia cares about the things and the initiatives that they care about. They have been for years since they started as a company. And so in that case, I think that's great. But in some of the cases of like Google or the mega companies, I don't know. I just don't put much faith in thinking that they care.
Well, like one thing with Amazon I've noticed now is like when you log into your account, it asks you to pick a charity to donate to once every purchase you buy on Amazon, for you personally. So it's like maybe it's them trying to let you donate your money to charity. Like, I don't know, it's in some sort of way that they're trying to capture something from you, right? It's like almost like in line of checkout when you're in a grocery store. Yes, there's usually a cause that they have there at Publix. It's like, hey, donate this. You write your name on a card and we put it, at the front. So I think Amazon's trying to hone in on that, right? Like, whether they donate to charity or whatever they do is like almost irrelevant, because they want for you to identify with what you believe and give you that power, which I think is kind of an interesting thing, because that's like, when I first saw it, I thought immediately it went to my mind at the grocery store thing. But those causes are, it's one thing, whether it be, a baseball team needs gear, or it's like donating to cancer research, stuff like that. Amazon puts that power in your hands to pick where where you put that money.
But it's like Amazon can't register to vote. Like, I just... I don't know. I'm just so weary about that. Like, I think real change and action happens on such local levels, and I want more care and thought to go into the local levels and like pushing those efforts and coming through and caring about my community, because community change is like the most important change. And the really big overarching issues, they piss us off and we should have opinions about them, and I love that. And like, I love how engaged all of you are, and like, I know how engaged all of you are, obviously on a day-to-day level. But I also think that so much of what good can happen is so micro that you don't see the benefit necessarily, and you can't really pat yourself on the back for doing anything. It's like these small little things that you can do to make the world better. And I really appreciate organizations that push forward local initiatives, because the kind of overarching higher ones, it just feels like this way to make them look like a good company brand, like, which... that I don't.
It all comes off as like PR more than anything.
Yeah. It's activism's just a commodity now.
That's why I was saying in
like an entirely different
that's what
topic in
happens
itself.
to anything. It all becomes capitalized. Like, that's what happens to anything that enters into the market now, and it's so sad and depressing, and you don't want that to be the truth, but it is the truth. And yeah, I just think there's really, we have to get smart about the way we pat a company on the back now. Like, we have to really like create a strong set of, I can't think of the word, like a strong set of standards for these companies. And like, not every company that says they do good things is a good company.
True.
Yeah. So what would you guys say to smaller, local, and medium tier businesses that want to stand out as members of the community, with controversial or political issues?
I think she makes a good point. Basically, like, that's how you segment yourself from every other business in your area that does that. Take a stance on something that's You know, whether it is bike lanes or just safer road conditions, it could be a multitude of things. It's just like pick something, live by that, and, you know, let it identify in the community. And because you're not trying to compete on a national level there, you're only competing with what you have here. So I think personally it's more important if you're a small business to take a stance on something than it is for a bigger brand. Because bigger brands, regardless, sometimes they're just like, they're so big that, you know, if you need running shoes, like, or you need some, you know, some athletic wear, like, you're going to go to Nike, kind of regardless whether or not. Some people, yes, there's exceptions where they won't buy anything, but I think on a local level where there's choice, it makes the most sense to, you know, to put yourself, you know, highlight your business and your community to take a stance on something. I think that's the most important thing for small businesses. Way more important for small business, I think, than the larger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's to offer a wrap up to the conversation. I think the 4 and 5 marketing leaders that say that brands should not be getting political, I think they're stuck in the past, because social media gives brands an outlet to not just push different copies and like value propositions, but to actually join conversations and to actually engage with individual people, not just segments of people, but actual individuals, and have conversations with them and to talk about things that are hard to talk about, and to make jokes and to be valuable pieces of our day and our social media experience. So it's those marketers that say that they're not thinking forward enough. Brands should have, it's important for small businesses to have an identity, because a lot of them don't, and they need an authentic voice, and they need a specific identity and specific positions on different controversies, on different local issues, on different sports teams even.
Yeah.
Just be more human. Thinking of me saying this now, like, if you told me this 10 years ago, I'd laugh in your face. Like, brands being more human, that's ridiculous. Like, we don't need human versions of Subway walking around telling me to eat fresh. But basically that's happening now on the internet. Like, Subway will say, like, hey, Alabama's football team sucks. Eat fresh. And I'll retweet it because it's awesome and that's hilarious and it's absolutely true in every regard. Yeah. So
did Subway tweet that?
No.
Oh, okay.
They need to though.
That'd be great. Somebody in Florida should do that. Central Florida, whatever business it is, needs to discuss Alabama football.
Yeah.
You can promote UCF at the same time.
National champs. 2018.com.